Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we'll be covering qualitative data, thematic analysis, BPS ethics, and risk management for AS level psychology. These are important topics for both exams and research methods. By the end of this lesson, you'll understand how psychologists analyze qualitative data, how ethical guidelines protect participants, and how researchers manage risk. So let's get started. First, let's look at thematic analysis. Thematic analysis is a method used to analyze qualitative data. Instead of working with numbers, researchers examine words, responses, and experiences to identify patterns and themes. The goal is to reduce large amount of information into meaningful themes while keeping the original meaning of the data. There are two approaches to thematic analysis, the inductive approach and the deductive approach. The inductive approach would be bottom-up approach. The themes are emerged from the data itself, and there are no pre-existing assumptions, and it is more exploratory. While the deductive approach is top-down approach, the themes are decided before analyzing data, and it is based on existing theories, and it's more structured. A simple way to remember this is inductive equals discovering themes, while deductive equals testing themes. To carry out thematic analysis, researchers follow 6 steps. First, familiarize yourself with the data. Second, generate initial codes. Third, search for themes. Fourth, review the themes. Fifth, define and name themes. And lastly, produce a final report. For exams, make sure you know the order of these steps. Now, let's see how this works in practice. Researchers interview students about online learning. For example, feeling isolated becomes the code isolation. Feeling nervous on camera becomes camera anxiety. Being able to rewind lectures becomes flexibility. This stage is called coding, where key ideas are identified from participant responses. After coding, similar codes are grouped together into broader themes. The first theme, psychological impact. There will be isolation, camera anxiety, social loss, and self-consciousness. Second theme, flexibility and structure. Flexibility, autonomy, and home distractions. The third theme will be adaptation strategies. There will be technical barriers, alternative communications, and mixed emotions. Notice how several codes combine to create one larger theme. Now, let's move on to ethics. The British Psychological Society, or BPS, provides ethical guidelines that researchers must follow when conducting psychological research. These guidelines help protect participants and maintain trust in psychology. There are 4 core principles in the BPS Codes of Ethics. Respect, to protect privacy, confidentiality, and informed consent, and the right to withdraw. Competence, researchers must understand ethical guidelines and recognize their own limitations. Responsibility, researchers must protect participants from harm and ensure that participation is voluntary. Integrity, researchers must act honestly and fairly throughout the research process. These 4 principles form the foundation of ethical research. Now, let's look at the main ethical guidelines you need to know. Confidentiality, right to withdraw, informed consent, protection from harm, privacy, deception, and debriefing. These are frequently tested in exams, so make sure you can explain each one. Many famous studies face ethical issues. For example, in Milgram's obedience study, the issues included were deception, psychological harm, and problems with the right to withdraw. In Edge conformity study, the issues included were deception, embarrassment, and temporary loss of confidence. Researchers attempted to reduce these issues through debriefing and allowing participants to withdraw their data. Now, let's discuss risk management. Risk management is the process of identifying possible risks, evaluating them, and taking steps to minimize harm before conducting research. There are five stages in risk management. First, you identify the possible risks. Second, determine who might be affected. Third, evaluate the severity and likelihood. Fourth, document the risk assessment. And lastly, monitor and modify throughout the study. Remember that risk assessment is not a one time task, it continues throughout the research. Here's an example. Researchers investigating social media and body image might identify risks such as psychological distress, confidentiality breaches, peer pressure, triggering content, and data misuse. To reduce these risks, researchers can use screening, anonymized data, support resources, and secure storage. And that's everything you need to know about qualitative data, thematic analysis, BPS ethics, and risk management. If this video helped you, don't forget to leave a comment, like, and thanks for watching.